Hey! All right, here we are. Season finale of season 1.
Wow.
We are here. We are ready to talk about After the Storm, which is a phenomenal song. It's by a band called Mumford and Sons that you may have heard about. They're pretty cool. So, yeah, you excited?
Very excited. This is the song I've been most excited for.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you should be doubly excited because I think this is going to be an extremely long, like ridiculously long episode. So, well, I guess without further ado, or further much ado, let's get started. First of all, I'm going to go get the lyric booklet.
Okay.
There you go.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. So why don't you read off the lyrics to the final song on the album Sigh No More?
Okay, here we go. And after the storm, I run and run as the rains come, and I look up. On my knees and out of luck, I look up. Night has always pushed up day. You must know life to see decay. But I won't rot. I won't rot. Not this mind and not this heart. I won't rot. And I took you by the hand, and we stood tall, and remembered our own land, what we live for. But there will come a time you'll see, with no more tears, and love will not break your heart, but dismiss your fears. Get over your hill and see what you find there, with grace in your heart and flowers in your hair. Now I cling to what I knew. I saw exactly what was true, but oh, no more. That's why I hold. That's why I hold with all I have. That's why I hold. And I will die alone and be left there. Well, I guess I'll just go home, or God knows where. Because death is just so full, and man so small. I'm scared of what's behind and what's before. But there will come a time you'll see, with no more tears, and love will not break your heart, but dismiss your fears. Get over your hill and see what you find there, with grace in your heart and flowers in your hair.
I think this is the song in the album that brings me closest to tears.
Mm-hmm.
This is an intense one. This is the last final grappling with hope and despair and life and death.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very emotionally intense.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely brought me to tears.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Most Mumford and Sons songs don't make me cry, with the exception of Beloved. I tear up every time. But this is probably the closest one on this album, except for maybe Awake My Soul, but they're very different types of tears in that case.
Mm-hmm.
So, speaking of tears, there's tears in this song, and that's going to be an important theme going forward. I want to talk for a minute about the literary sources for this particular song. So those literary sources would be a song by the name of Sigh No More, another song called The Cave, a song called Winter Winds, a song called Roll Away Your Stone, and so on and so forth. Basically, the sources for this song are all 11 of the preceding songs on this album. I went through, if you didn't know I was a Mumford and Sons nerd, this will definitely prove it to you. I went through all of the songs on this album and cross-referenced all of the different, all of the words, thematic words that were the same in different songs. Came up with 34 different thematic words that appear in multiple songs. And 25 out of those 34 words show up in this song. Every single other song shares at least 6 words, 6 of those thematic words with this song. Most share more in the field of 9 or 10, some as many as 13. So basically, this song is just the culmination of everything that came before it and a rehashing of the entire album and all of the major themes on it. Because, there aren't really any major thematic words that don't show up. I don't think soul and body show up, but there's definitely, language similar to that. What I want to do is, after we do the No Fear Mumford translation, we're going to go through instead of going line by line through this song, we're going to go song by song through the other songs. And by doing that, we'll be tackling all of the lines in After the Storm. Because pretty much all of the lines in After the Storm share thematic words with these other songs. So we'll be looking at After the Storm through the lens of all of the other songs. Because that's how Mumford and Sons designed this. Was actually kind of it for it to be the other way around, to look at the other songs through the lens of After the Storm. But comes out to more or less the same thing, I guess. So first, however, let's do the final No Fear Mumford translation of the lyrics for a song on this album. So it goes like more or less like this. This was kind of a tricky one to write, but when the storm is over and it stops raining, I finally stop running. Exhausted and out of luck, I fall to my knees, and I look up at the sky to make sure that the storm is really over. They say that day always follows night. I say that death always follows life. But I won't give up. I won't let my mind and my heart die. I grabbed your hand and we raised each other up from our knees, remembering the land we came from and are going to. It's the whole reason that we're alive. When we get there, all our tears will be gone, and we'll experience a love that will dismiss our fears, not break our hearts like it does in this life. Let's climb to the top of this hill and look down on the valley of peace that's waiting for us on the other side. After everything we've been through, it's hard to believe the promises I've heard. I used to see things as they really are, but not anymore. Hope is all I have left, and I cling to that with every ounce of my strength. And when I die, I'll be laid in the earth all alone, and God only knows where my soul will go after that. Compared to the mystery of death, I am nothing. I'm ashamed of the life I've lived, and afraid of the life to come. But there will come a time with no more tears, and you'll experience a love that dismisses your fears instead of breaking your heart. After you climb the hill of the final struggle, you'll look out into the great beyond, and the grace in your heart and the flowers in your hair will show your true beauty, and you'll enter into the beauty of love as it was made to be. All right, so that's the No Fear Mumford translation. Did it make sense, you think?
It did.
Because it was kind of tricky to write, because usually with these I try to show a little bit of what I try to walk a fine line between simply rewording the imagery that they use, but while also trying to bring out what those images like mean on a deeper level. So that's what I was trying to do there. Did you disagree with anything that was in there? Like, would you have interpreted anything differently?
I guess the only thing that made me have to think deeper, connect the dots, was when you said, that's why I hold on hope. And I think that's true. I was like, oh, I had to think about it. I wonder, well, because hope's not in here, at least I don't think.
No, it's not.
So, but I think hold on hope it definitely is used in another song.
Yeah, in The Cave.
Yes.
I will hold on hope and I won't let you choke. And then also in Thistle and Weeds.
Yes.
I will hold on hope.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why, so far in this album, whenever we've seen that phrase, I will hold on, it's always followed by hope. So I think it's not much of a stretch to
yes,
to expect that it would be referring to hope here as well.
I would agree. That was just the only thing that made me question. So everything else, though, seemed pretty accurate.
All right, good. And then just a couple more things before we go into the song-by-song analysis. There are 3 different ways that you could read this song. It's as a man and a woman speaking to each other, right? And having these, I think it would be like the man speaking at first, and then maybe after the first chorus would be the woman speaking or something along those lines. It's kind of hard to distinguish the speakers, though. You could also read it as an inner dialogue between a man and his soul, or you could also read it as a dialogue between man and God. And I think all three of those ways of reading it are perfectly valid, and each one brings out different aspects of this. The real question about it rests on who is speaking the chorus.
Right.
Because it seems, it looks like the chorus is probably spoken by a different voice than the verses. So who's the one saying, "There will come a time you'll see when love will not break your heart"? That could be, a human being reassuring another human being. It could be someone, a man reassuring his own soul, or vice versa. Or it could be God reassuring a person, a human being. We've seen going through this album that these songs benefit from interpreting them on multiple levels, like most good poetry, especially this type of lyrical, more abstract poetry tends to really benefit from that sort of thing. Also, this song is a poem about death. I think I brought that out in the No Fear Mumford translation fairly clearly, because he's really, he's very concerned about dying alone and being left there and not knowing what's going to happen to him after that, and trying to hold on to the hope of that promise that he's received, that there will come a time with no more tears when love will not break his heart. It's about death. It's called After the Storm because the storm is the trials and tribulations of this life, and death comes after life, but then this song is about what comes after death. Right? That imagery of getting over the hill and seeing, so that hill, that mountain, that's the final frontier, right? Between this life and the next. And we don't really know what's on the other side, what we're going to see when we get over that hill. But we want to see it with grace in our hearts and flowers in our hair. So that's the goal here. And I guess, we'll look at the imagery of time is going to be very important in this song. And so we'll look at that as it comes up in the different songs as we go through. So without further much ado, let's go back and visit Sigh No More. Not the album, the song. Sigh no more, no more, one foot in sea, one on shore, etc., etc. So if you'll remember, this was like half the lines in this song are quotes and references from Much Ado About Nothing by William Shakespeare. We have complete works of William Shakespeare here. It's I'm not going to go through and talk about this whole song. If you want a refresher on that, just go back and listen to that episode again. But want to look at a few of there were 8 of those key thematic words that Sigh No More shares with After the Storm. So I'm not going to go through and talk about each one of those, just the most important ones. The first thematic word is seeing, right? And the line in Sigh No More is a cry of my heart to see, right? Talking about seeing the beauty of love as it was made to be. So the heart is crying out to see things. And here in After the Storm, the language of seeing is very important. He talks about how you must know life to see decay. Then especially in the chorus, he talks about seeing quite a bit. He says, but there will come a time you'll see. And later on, get over your hill and see what you find there. So it's all about, we're trying to see the promise come to fulfillment, these promises that we've received, and we're trying to see things as they really are, and our heart is crying out to see those things, as Sigh No More points out. And then speaking of the heart, talks about the heart several times in Sigh No More, saying my heart was never pure, and then of course talking about the design, alignment, cry of my heart to see. And the heart is very important in After the Storm also. Not a surprise there, right? The heart is an extremely important part of the human person. We've been talking about the heart a lot in this podcast so far, and cannot overstate the importance of the heart, except maybe we can, because if we just focus on the heart and forget the soul, then we're in trouble, as we learned in Awake My Soul. So anyway, the passages where they talk about the heart in After the Storm is when he says, I won't rot, not this mind and not this heart, I won't rot. When he's talking about rotting, he's talking about like just giving into despair, basically, allowing his mind and his heart to just sort of stagnate. That's pretty reminiscent of Thistle and Weeds, of that song, which we'll talk about in due time. Then later on, he says, during the chorus, that promise that love will not break your heart, which is really a very interesting and hopeful promise, because we've seen heartbreak after heartbreak show up in this album in these different songs. And so to have that promise that there will come a time when, with no more tears, and love will not break our hearts but dismiss our fears, is extremely reassuring. Mm-hmm. It's so good we probably won't even believe. Mm-hmm. We won't even believe it. Later in the chorus, get over your hill and see what you find there with grace in your heart. And so the heart can be, there are all sorts of proper and improper dispositions of the heart, and what Mumford and Sons is really focusing on here in this song is having grace in your heart, having your heart properly aligned with that design of the heart, and that cry to see the beauty of love, right? Have grace in your heart and flowers in your hair. That's how you're going to participate in the beauty of love as it was made to be. That's when your soul is at its most beautiful, is when your heart is full of grace. Mm-hmm. Also in the chorus, they talk about how there's going to be no more tears, right? And Sigh No More is all about tears, mm-hmm. right? It's literally called Sigh No More. Sigh no more, ladies, sigh no more. Men were deceivers ever. One foot in sea and one on shore, to one thing constant ever. So, by hearkening to that song from Much Ado About Nothing, Mumford and Sons is trying to examine what it looks like for that not to be the case, so that we don't have to sigh no more, right? You know, why are men deceivers ever, with one foot in sea and one on shore, and how do we get out of that, and how do we become the men that we were made to be? And that's by following the cry of our heart to see the beauty of love. The sigh and the cry, very closely connected with those tears, mm-hmm. that we hear, and after the storm will be no more, when we in that time, that distant time when we get over the hill. With no more tears, and love will not break your heart. So obviously love is another important theme here, right? Mm-hmm. So in Sigh No More, it says, love, it will not betray you, dismay or enslave you, it will set you free. Be more like the man you were made to be. Which, again, that's such a powerful, hopeful claim. It's one of those things that whenever we hear it, we probably don't really believe it, because if we really believed it, we would live our lives like that, and most of us don't, right? Because men were deceivers ever, because of sin and the fall, all that jazz. But all the same, there is a design, an alignment, a cry of my heart to see the beauty of love as it was made to be. It always ends up coming back to love. Mm-hmm. Love is the ultimate thing. St. John tells us that God is love. To receive that promise that there will be a time when love will not break our heart, but will dismiss our fears, that's just incredibly powerful. Later in After the Storm, talks about how death is just so full and man so small. And so we've really been trying to use these lyrics as we go through this album, use these lyrics to examine human nature, what it is and what it means. And here in the last song, we're told that man is just so small. It's really true. Just compared with all of these mysteries, all of these things I don't know, as he says in Awake My Soul, man is just, there's no comparison between us and the mysteries of the universe. We're so small. And Sigh No More gave us the first description of man, right, as a giddy thing. Man is a giddy thing, oh man is a giddy thing. And here we find out that that giddy thing, which is man, is so small compared to death and to God. One of the Psalms says something along the lines of, what is man that you take notice of him, O Lord? What is, mortal man that you should care for him? And yet you have made him little more or little less than the angels, right? You've made man basically a god by coming to him, making covenant with him. And that's such a great mystery. In the face of that mystery, each one of us seems so small. So that's Sigh No More and its connections with After the Storm. Do you have any comments about that?
As far as other literary sources, I keep thinking about that line that you referenced. There will come a time you'll see no more tears. That makes me think of Revelation. Because I believe there's a line in Revelation 20 or something like that, where it says, he will wipe away every tear.
That's right, yeah. Which that would make a lot of sense given the, how this song is all about the life after death. And Revelation is about the kingdom of heaven.
Right, yeah.
Would make a lot of sense. What is that? Well, we don't have a library behind us for nothing. That's why are we here if not to look this up?
Yeah, that's always what I've thought of. And yes, I think it...
This is why I have you around. Aha. Behold, the dwelling of God is with men. He will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and God himself will be with them. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain any more, for the former things have passed away. That's pretty great. That sounds great. I could go for that. No, that's a really good other observation. I'm glad you brought that up. Any more thoughts about Sigh No More and its connections with After the Storm? I feel in a lot of ways that After the Storm is a sequel to Sigh No More because they're both so much about that promise.
Right, yes. I get a similar vibe when I listen to both of them. And there, it's the beginning and the end. I feel like
the Alpha and the Omega.
Yes, which is also in Revelation. That's where we get that. Is that where we get that title from Revelation, do you know? Or does it come up elsewhere?
I think Revelation is the only place it appears in Scripture.
Okay, fascinating.
But I mean, it was part of the Greek alphabet first.
Yes, of course. Yeah, so, right, I would agree that it seems like After the Storm is very closely connected with Sigh No More. And after the storm, we will sigh no more.
That's right. No more tears.
No more tears. Yeah.
All right. Good deal. Well, let's talk about the cave then. And if you thought Sigh No More had a lot of connections with After the Storm, strap in. The cave had... the cave just has a lot of lyrics in general, so there's a lot of... it's got a lot of common terms with a lot of other songs on the album. But, so for starters, the idea of knowing, that terminology. So in After the Storm, talk about how you must know life to see decay. And later on, now I cling to what I knew. And then a little later, I guess I'll just go home, or God knows where. So this idea that these things that we know or that we don't know are so important to us, right? You must know life to see decay, that nobody dies who hasn't already lived. And then now I cling to what I knew, and in that verse, he's just like grasping at straws because what he's been through is so traumatic that he doesn't really like find himself believing the promise anymore, but he knows that he used to believe it. And so he clings to the fact that once upon a time he knew that it was true.
Mm-hmm.
That, he used to see exactly what was true, but oh no more. That's why I hold on hope, basically. Faith is the assurance of things unseen or something along those lines. So it's all about, or C.S. Lewis was saying in Mere Christianity that faith isn't, having strong emotions about something. It's choosing to believe in something even when our emotions are getting in the way of our believing it. When our emotions say, "What are you doing?" No, when we're too afraid to believe in something, but we know that it's true. Faith, that's the virtue of faith. Then this idea of knowing is so prevalent in the cave as well. And it's pretty closely connected with the idea of seeing, which is also very prevalent in the cave, right? But just to iterate the moments in the cave where they talk about knowing, he says, "I know the shame in your defeat. I'll know my name as it's called again, and know my call despite my faults. And then you can understand dependence when you know the Maker's land. And towards the end, I need to know how to live my life as it's meant to be." So lots of talk about knowing and about really like understanding and seeing things correctly. Because really the central image in the cave is that coming out of the cave, walking on your hands, see the world hanging upside down. You can understand dependence when you know the Maker's land. That's the key, really the key image in the cave, and one of the most important images in the whole album, I would argue, because it's all about how we don't see things correctly. And in order to see things usually the way that we see things is actually the exact opposite of how they're supposed to be. And it's only by radically reorienting ourselves that we can understand the Maker's land, God's land, which is, it's everything because God made everything, so it's all his. And that teaches us how to understand the proper relationship between us and God, how we're dependent on him because he created everything, holds it all in existence. And after the storm, they talk about how you must know life to see decay. And if we really understand dependence, then we know that life and decay are both part of God's plan for us. And that all of this is that we don't need to worry about the future, because there will come a time that we'll see with no more tears. And he'll wipe away every tear from our eyes. We just need to get over our hill and see what we find there. In that same line, talking about the Maker's land, they also talk about land in After the Storm, right? "I took you by the hand and we stood tall and remembered our own land, what we live for," which, the scripture tells us that we are strangers and sojourners in this world, and that our true homeland is, you guessed it, in heaven. I'm not trying to turn this podcast into a Bible study or anything like that, but the deeper I go into these songs, the more scriptural imagery is coming up, and just the more spiritual it seems. And it's just incredible that the depth of spiritual insight that they have here is really, it's something you don't find in a whole lot of secular artists, that's for sure. Okay, and then here's another thing that's very important. We've talked a lot about fear in this podcast so far. The cave is really where that theme of fear is introduced, right? At the very beginning, talks about all the fears and all the faults you've left behind, and then later on how he says, "I'll know my call despite my faults and despite my growing fears." And we see him grappling with these fears all throughout the rest of the album. But part of the promise that we receive in After the Storm is that there will come a time With no more tears, love will not break our heart, but dismiss your fears. The fears will just be gone. They will be dismissed. You are dismissed. You don't need to be here anymore. Despite receiving that promise, though, the speaker in After the Storm still says, I'm scared of what's behind and what's before. That's because death is a frightening thing. In Beloved, they talk about, he says, are you afraid? However, could you not be in this rosy light, in this twilight of your existence in this world? Right? There's no way not to be afraid. But it's that, like what C.S. Lewis was talking about with faith, are we going to let that fear control us? Or are we going to choose to hold on, to hold with all I have to the hope of the promise that we've received? In After the Storm, he laments how I saw exactly what was true, but oh no more. He did have a glimpse of that truth which will refresh my broken mind, which he talks about in the cave. But he doesn't have that anymore, and that's why I hold with all I have. So this is interesting because in the cave, he wants that truth which will refresh his broken mind, right? And he says, but I will hold on hope. And then here in After the Storm, he says, I saw exactly what was true, but oh no more. That's why I hold. So it's almost the exact same language here, that relation between holding on to hope and looking for the truth. It's so important. So that's the cave. You want to talk about Winter Winds?
Yes.
Winter Winds, as Andrew would say. Okay. Winter Winds. So, After the Storm. So, this is the first song on the album that uses imagery of a storm, right? We've got the winter winds that are littering London with lonely hearts. So, storm, water, winter, rain, those are all very kindred terms on this album here. And so, after the storm, I run and run as the rains come. And so we know because of this that After the Storm takes place after Winter Winds. And Winter Winds has some prophecies in it about what will happen after the storm. Let's look at that. What have we got here? If your strife strikes at your sleep, remember, spring swaps snow for leaves, which is super easy to say. You'll be happy and wholesome again when the city clears and sun ascends. So here we have the reiteration of that promise. Huh?
We washed, buried, one day my girl. The time we were given will be left for the world. The flesh that lived in love will be eaten by plague. So let the memories be good for those who stay.
Yeah. Which is less consoling than that other stanza, but still, yeah, it's like that's
death.
That's still very closely related to After the Storm, right?
Yeah.
The flesh that lived and loved, and being washed and buried, right? I will die alone and be left there. That sort of thing. That's the main connection between Winter Winds, is we have this storm, but we have prophecies about what will happen after the storm, and then in After the Storm we see those things happening. It's so cool. So cool. Right, we'll be washed and buried, eaten by plague. Okay, and then this is an interesting connection here. We've got, you all remember the chorus from Winter Winds. One of the most interesting choruses in musical history. And my head told my heart, let love grow, but my heart told my head, this time no. So we've got that contrast, that dialogue, that duel between the head and the heart. And then, in After the Storm, he says, I won't rot, not this mind and not this heart, I won't rot. So we actually have the mind and the heart paired together, instead of paired in opposition to each other, which is a hopeful thing.
In alignment.
align my heart, my body, my mind, right? Dust Bowl Dance came right before After the Storm. In that song, he managed to align his heart, body, and mind. And so now we see that the mind and the heart are still aligned. So I thought that was cool. That's a good thing there. And the heart, right? We talked already about the heart in After the Storm and its central significance there. And then, here in Winter Winds, it's also centrally significant. Also love, right? So in Winter Winds, we have the first example of love breaking your heart. Well, I guess actually not exactly. It was we kind of had it already in Sigh No More, right? Yeah. Because he was saying Sigh No More, so there was already a broken heart. But here's another broken heart here in Winter Winds. And this one we get to see it actually happen, right? He uses love multiple times in Winter Winds, uses that word, right? Was it love or fear of the cold that led us through the night? My head told my heart, let love grow. The flesh that lived and loved will be eaten by plague. And the shame that sent me off from the God that I once loved was the same that sent me into your arms. So love is very confused here in Winter Winds. He really doesn't have a clear idea of what love means. He's not able to see the beauty of love as it was made to be. And so then to get to After the Storm and to have that promise that love will not break your heart is so powerful. And again, we have fear come up in this song, right? Was it love or fear of the cold that led us through the night? And we talked about fear in After the Storm, right? That love will dismiss your fears and that I'm scared of what's behind and what's before. But there is hope, right? Because in Winter Winds, he says you'll be happy and wholesome again when the city clears and sun ascends after the storm. But right before then, he says, and no hope will overcome. So in Winter Winds, he's going back and forth. Is there hope? Is there not? And that kind of happens again here in After the Storm, that he gets the promise that there will come a time when, with no more tears, that's why I hold with all I have. That's why I hold. So, Winter Winds. Comments on Winter Winds before we move on to Roll Away Your Stone?
No, but I like once again, I like the way you've connected them. Nothing additional to add, except I agree.
Cool. All right. Roll away your stone. I'll roll away mine. So, seeing. We talked about seeing already for After the Storm. And here in Roll Away Your Stone, darkness dominates the things I see. And that's kind of how it is in this life, is that darkness dominates what we see, but we want to see what we find over the hill. We want to see the better things, we want to see the beauty of love, but here we see darkness, particularly when we start to look at ourselves introspectively and try to sort out everything that's wrong in our own hearts and souls. We encounter a lot of darkness there. I can say that from experience.
Yeah. Dark night of the soul.
Because you told me that I would find a hole within the fragile substance of my soul, and that's that void can be pretty dark. Also, land shows up here. Well, not exactly the word land, but he says, and so I'll be found with my stake stuck in this ground, marking the territory of this newly impassioned soul. So here he's starting to remember our own land, what we live for, right? He's getting some perspective about what sort of land he's striving for. And then in After the Storm, there will come a time you'll see. And time is used 3 times in Roll Away Your Stone. He says, don't leave me alone at this time. Later on, he says, I will give them up to you this time around. And then later he says, you've gone too far this time. So it's always this time in Roll Away Your Stone. So we're very much still in the present, the church militant, you could say, working towards reaching that time in the distance when we get over the hill. But for now, we're still in this time, and there's much to do in this time, and we don't want to be alone in this time because I'm afraid of what I will discover inside, and there's fear again. Also, a lot of imagery of finding here in this song. And in After the Storm, it says, get over your hill and see what you find there. So we know that what we're going to find is the fulfillment of all those promises that we've received. That love will not betray you, dismay, or enslave you, that you'll be happy and wholesome again, that the truth will refresh your broken mind, all that jazz. And but here in Roll Away Your Stone, again, we're still very much in the present, very much on earth, because he says, together we can see what we will find. And then he says, you told me that I would find a hole within the fragile substance of my soul. So the things that we're finding now are not the things that we want, that we're going to find ultimately. We're still very much on the way. And then he says, and so I'll be found with my stake stuck in this ground. So even though he's still on the way, he's deciding here and now what sort of person he wants to be. That he wants to be the person who's going to see this through to the end. And even though all of his bridges have been burnt, but you say that's exactly how this grace thing works. And there's grace here in this song. And grace is obviously important in After the Storm, because when you get over the hill and see what you find there, you'll have grace in your heart and flowers in your hair. So that's Roll Away Your Stone, then. Moving on to White Blank Page. In After the Storm, he says, on my knees and out of luck, I look up. And here, in White Blank Page, he says, can you kneel before the king? So I think primarily the on my knees line in After the Storm is hearkening back to Thistle and Weeds, but it's also hearkening back to White Blank Page here. Can you kneel before the king? So After the Storm, he's on his knees and out of luck, so he's kneeling in, probably for several reasons, right? For exhaustion, for surrender, for petition, and in White Blank Page it says, can you kneel before the king and say I'm clean? But we know from Sigh No More that my heart was never pure. So the question is, has this storm that we've gone through made us clean enough to kneel before the king and say I'm clean? In White Blank Page, I don't think he was clean, but After the Storm, maybe. That's the hope.
That purification by trials.
Right. By baptism.
By baptism, yeah.
Because water, like I've said before, when in biblical terms, water always references baptism. And so, especially if it's water that's been poured down on somebody, that's actually pretty clear baptismal allegory there. So the storm that we're going through, these winter winds, these rains and storms, these are baptismal, purifying, cleansing waters.
White blank page, like a blank clean page.
Yeah, that's interesting. Even though the term white blank page is primarily negative in the song.
Yes.
But there might still be something there, because that's what we do want our soul to be clean. We want our heart to be clean.
Yes.
And pure and white. Again, images that function on multiple levels.
Right.
It's great. And here in white blank page, we see the heart comes back, right? Can you lie next to her and give her your heart as well as your body? And then later, so tell me now, where was my fault in loving you with my whole heart? And so the heart, we're really still trying to get that heart in alignment. It hasn't happened yet, but he's really asking a lot of questions about that, because we know that only by aligning the heart are we going to be able to kneel before the king and say, I'm clean. We've talked already about love and after the storm. Love is very important here in white blank page. Can you lie next to her and confess your love as well as your folly? Later on, you desired my attention, but denied my affections. So tell me now, where was my fault in loving you with my whole heart? So really, love is very confused again here. He doesn't, this is the first of several betrayal songs where he's given his heart away, he's given his love to somebody, and yet the love was not reciprocated. He ended up suffering betrayal, and it's just a mess. So it really serves to punctuate that promise in After the Storm, that love will not break your heart, but dismiss your fears. And then in After the Storm, it says, I saw exactly what was true, but oh no more. And here in white blank page, he's crying out to the universe, to anybody, saying, lead me to the truth, and I will follow you with my whole life. He's still looking for that truth that will refresh his broken mind. He hasn't found it yet. And then also, I just want to point out, in case we forgot, but the king in this song is, maybe on one level, it's an earthly king, but it's very much the big man.
Yeah. The King of Kings.
King of Kings, Lord of Lords. Yes. Moving on to I Gave You All. So here's the first major storm in this album, which is interesting because there isn't much imagery of a storm in the lyrics themselves. But this is very much this song is drawn very much from King Lear by William Shakespeare, this guy. And the main, sort of the most memorable scene from King Lear takes place in this middle of the play, is when he's out on the heath in the middle of a storm, and he's just super upset because his daughters have betrayed him and everybody's leaving him and nobody likes him anymore, and he's losing it. His sanity is teetering on the brink. And so that opening line of I gave you all, rip the earth in two with your mind, is very much reminiscent of King Lear. And there's a lot of really reminiscent language of King Lear. If you don't believe me, go back and listen to the I Gave You All episode, and I lay it all out there. But here we have, we're very much out there on the heath in the storm with King Lear in this song. And so we're in the storm, and then later, when After the Storm comes, it'll be after the storm. But this is where the storm really begins, and it's going to pick up again, and very much so in Thistle and Weeds, where there is a lot of actual imagery of a storm, of rain and storming in that song. Not so much in this one, but also we have tears again in this song. Your tears feel warm as they fall on my forearm. So it just punctuates again that promise There will come a time, you'll see, with no more tears. We will get there. And then, there's references to the eyes and seeing and being blind. And I guess this would be a good time to talk about hands. In After the Storm, he says, I took you by the hand, and we stood tall, and remembered our own land, what we live for. So there's very much that idea of when we are on this earth, we need other people at our side to so that they can hold our hand and support us, and we can do the same for them. But here in I gave you all, he says, but you rip it from my hands and you swear it's all gone. So we have the exact opposite of what's supposed to be happening. We're supposed to be holding each other up, but instead he's just being betrayed and having everything that he has taken away from him. And it's just not great. He says, how can you say that your truth is better than ours? So he's still looking for that truth, and he's running into people who are saying, I don't care about our mutual truth, I'm just looking for my own. And that's just not satisfactory to him. So, Little Lion Man then talks about the problems that you made in your own head, right? All those problems. Head and mind are synonyms here. And so he hasn't really aligned the mind with the heart here. He's got all these problems in his head. And then heart is really important here. It says, you'll never be what is in your heart. And then, of course, in the chorus, and it was your heart on the line. And so we haven't, still breaking hearts here, right?
Yep.
It's not fun. And we're still crying. Weep for yourself, my man. You'll never be what is in your heart. Weep, little lion man. You're not as brave as you were at the start. And speaking of being brave or not being brave, there's fear again, right? And fear is all over this song, even though the word fear never shows up in it, which is interesting. Take all the courage you have left. Tremble for yourself, my man. Tremble, little lion man. Your boldness stands alone among the wreck. There's just so much fear. The fear is threatening to take over here, which I think is really a result of all of the betrayal that he's gone through in the preceding songs. And remember that grace that he was finding in Roll Away Your Stone? Well, here, your grace is wasted in your face. And so, it doesn't matter how much grace is thrown at us if we don't take advantage of it, if we just waste it. It's never going to end up in our heart. And so here, we've been looking at human nature. Here's man again. And what do we find out about him here? He's a little lion man. Like a little lion, he's afraid. And so in After the Storm, we find out that man is so small. And, here in Little Lion Man, the tone is very accusatory, and we could talk all day about whether or not the accusation is warranted or entirely true. But there does seem to be some level of, unjust self-flagellation and self-accusation taking place. So he's not really as fearful and powerless and impotent as he's made out to be in the song. But still, we do know that man is small. Because we know that man is not God. Right. Therefore, man must be pretty small compared to God. And then Tim Shell, track number 8. Here we got a lot of important words to talk about. Well, first of all, we've got the water here again. So, baptism, storm, winter, water, rain, etc. We've got we've got death. Death is a very important theme in what's it called? After the Storm. That's the word. And death takes several different forms. There are a number of words about death in After the Storm. You must know life to see decay, but I won't rot, not this mind and not this heart, I won't rot. And then later, and I will die alone and be left there, or be buried, because death is just so full and so small. So, very much obsessed with death in After the Storm. And here in Tim Shell, we find out that death is at your doorstep, and it will steal your innocence. But it can't steal your substance, right? Its desire is for you, but you can master it. You must master it. And another really important image here is, as brothers, we will stand and will hold your hand. So that prefigures After the Storm, where I took you by the hand and we stood tall. So it's that image of taking the hand and standing in both of these songs paired together. And then at the end of the last line of Tim Shell is, but I can't move the mountains for you. And in After the Storm, talking about get over your hill. So you've got to climb that hill. I can't move it out of the way for you. But when you get over it, you'll see what you find there, with grace in your heart and flowers in your hair. And you are not alone in this. You are not alone in this. As brothers, we will stand and will hold your hand. So when he has that fear, and After the Storm, right, that fear of dying alone and being left there, he's not alone. Ultimately, everybody, we're all on this journey together, and we can help each other.
Yeah.
And we find out another thing about man in this song too, right? And you have your choices. These are what make man great, his ladder to the stars. So man is small, but man can, with the help of grace, man can make decisions that will help him to climb to the stars, that will make him great. Thistle and weeds. Lots of imagery about the storm in this song. He talks about this winter clarity, alone in the wind and the rain. You left me, it's getting dark, darling, too dark to see. On my knees, and the water creeps to my chest. Rain down on me, and the sky above us shoots to kill. So, we are very much in the middle of a storm here in Thistle and Weeds. All sorts of stormy things happening around us. And there's that imagery of being on your knees again. So in After the Storm, it's on my knees and out of luck, I look up. And here it's, I'm on my knees and your faith in shreds it seems. And then later, I'm on my knees and the water creeps to my chest. So just very, very similar situation here.
Yeah.
But I think there's a little more hope in After the Storm than there is in Thistle and Weeds here. But we already talked about how death is an important theme in After the Storm, and it's definitely important here as well. Talks about how you shouldn't cover yourself with thistle and weeds, which is basically talking about spiritual death there. And then the sky above us shoots to kill. So it's physical death there. And then later, let the dead bury the dead, which is death and burial, just like we see in After the Storm. I also thought it was interesting that this language of where he says, I sit alone in this winter clarity which clouds my mind in Thistle and Weeds, very similar to what he says in After the Storm, where he says, not this mind and not this heart, I won't rot. So that clouded mind and letting his mind and his heart rot seems to be very similar. And then later on in Thistle and Weeds, he says, look over your hills and be still. And then, of course, and after the storm, he says, get over your hill and see. So just a lot of really similar language here. In Thistle and Weeds, he says, I will hold on hope. He says that a lot of times over and over again.
There it is.
And then in After the Storm, that's why I hold with all I have. That's why I hold. And he's very alone in Thistle and Weeds. I sit alone in this winter clarity, and then alone in the wind and the rain you left me. And obviously there's that same tension in After the Storm, that I will die alone and be left there. So these songs are pretty similar.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. So I almost feel like After the Storm is kind of a sequel to Thistle and Weeds.
And this is just a connection I'm thinking of, which I don't know if it was intentional, but I'm thinking about after it rains, that's when the weeds are always the easiest to pull out.
That's true. That's true. Very much goes along with the agricultural language that we have in this song. Okay then, Awake My Soul.
Woohoo!
We talked about how knowing is so important in After the Storm, that you must know life to see decay, and that I cling to what I knew, and that God knows where I'm going to go when I die. And in Awake My Soul, we saw that his heart was stumbling on things that he doesn't know. So these mysteries too great for us. They're too great for us.
Which is in Job, right? Now my eye has seen things too wonderful for me.
Yeah, he talks about how he says, I have spoken about things too wonderful for me.
Yes.
I had heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eye sees you.
Yeah.
And so coming face to face with these mysteries too great, it doesn't cause us to understand them. What it makes us understand is that they really are too great for us. Yeah, and it's interesting that God speaks to Job out of a storm also.
Yeah.
So maybe there's some little bit of Job in this album as well. Definitely, deals with a lot of the same themes that show up in Job.
Yeah. Suffering.
There will come a time, we'll see. And death and life, those things. So here in After the Storm, life is talks about life several times. You must know life to see decay. And then we remembered our own land, what we live for. And so After the Storm is all about how we're living in this world and then passing over into the next. And Awake My Soul deals with that as well. It says, in these bodies we will live, in these bodies we will die, and where you invest your love, you invest your life. So it's all about looking towards the next life as the most important thing. And we already talked about seeing in After the Storm, and seeing and eyes are key players in Awake My Soul here. How fickle my heart and how woozy my eyes. And then lend me your eyes, I can change what you see. So what are we trying to see? We're trying to see the beauty of love as it was made to be. We're trying to see what we'll find when we get over the hill. And it's a gradual process of one step at a time, changing what we see by changing our hearts, as they say in Roll Away Your Stone. And speaking of the heart, how fickle my heart. Now my heart stumbles on things I don't know. Lend me your heart and I'll just let you fall. The heart is such a... the heart's such a puzzle piece. It's really... Or maybe it's a puzzle with a bunch of different pieces.
Yeah. Ooh, what is it?
Well, I guess it would be in pieces because the heart has been broken.
Yes. Right? Yes.
But we have that promise that love will not break our heart. That it will not betray you, dismay, or enslave you. It will set you free. So if you have grace in your heart and flowers in your hair, you'll be able to see that beauty of love. And other people can help us get there. He says, lend me your hand and we'll conquer them all. And after the storm, I took you by the hand and we stood tall. So that's fun. They actually rhyme with each other here. Probably unintentional on their part. But speaking of standing tall, he says, but lend me your heart and I'll just let you fall. So it's again, we're still fallen, we're still struggling and stumbling, but we'll get there. Speaking of struggling, we are struggling to find any truth in your lies. So, and then after the storm, he says, I saw exactly what was true, but oh, no more. And so when we're just surrounded by lies all of the time, we have brief moments where we see the truth exactly as it is, but they're just flashes, glimpses. They don't last long. So we need to hold on to what we believed in the night when the darkness has robbed us of all of our sight. And then, of course, Awake My Soul has the classic line, awake my soul, for you were made to meet your maker, which that's what's going to happen after the storm.
Yep.
And when we get over the hill, see what we find there. What do you think is going to happen there? Yep, you guessed it.
Yeah, when you meet that love that will not break your heart, but dismiss your fears.
Yeah.
Perfect love casts out all fear.
And we'll see the beauty of love as it was made to be, which is uncreated love. God himself. It's pretty wild. I'm getting excited just thinking about it. Okay, one more.
Whoa.
Dust Bowl Dance. So, Dust Bowl Dance is all about coming face to face with reality, seeing things clearly. You are my accuser, now look at my face. There will come a time I will look in your eye. I know what I've done because I know what I've seen. So it's all about seeing and looking and aligning the heart and body and mind with each other. But that can only happen in that song. It only happens after all of the tragedy, right? I have nowhere to stand and now nowhere to hide. I've been kicked off my land, this dusty, barren land. So it's the story of a young man encountering the fact that what he's placed is where he's invested his love is not ultimately something that's going to satisfy him, because it's something that other people can take away from him. It's not his own land that he's supposed to be living for. It's just a dusty, barren land on this earth. And that's not what's going to satisfy him. So he placed all of his trust at the foot of this hill, but that's not the hill that he's supposed to. We're not supposed to put trust in the foot of the hill. We're supposed to climb the hill, get over the hill, and see what we find there. Just like Christ climbed up Mount Calvary, carrying the cross. He wasn't crucified at the foot of it. He was crucified on top. And that's where we're trying to get. Or Dante's Dante's Divine Comedy, where they're climbing Mount Purgatory to get to heaven.
Mhm. Yeah, or that, I'm thinking of Roll Away Your Stone. I think we had talked about the hill for Sisyphus.
Sisyphus, yes.
Yeah.
Rolling, where he's caught in that eternal conundrum of rolling the stone up the hill only to have it roll back down to the bottom.
Yeah. So something again with a hill.
But I said time was important in After the Storm, and it definitely is. There will come a time, you'll see, so that time when everything will be, we'll have the new heaven and the new earth, will be over the hill, meet the Maker, etc., etc. And so it's interesting, in Dust Bowl Dance, he uses that same line. He says, there will come a time, but he uses it, he's not referring to that ultimate time. He's talking about the time when I will look in your eye and you'll pray to the God that you've always denied. And he does do that, and he shoots the man, and then he has to align his heart and body and mind to face what I've done and do my time. And so he needs to suffer for his sin, for what he's done. He needs to be purged.
Mm-hmm.
He needs to go through a purifying purgatorial fires and baptismal waters, so that he can kneel before the king and say, I'm clean. That God that you've always denied, right? And then I just think it's, we brought this up in the Dust Bowl Dance episode, but I want to bring it up again here, and it's that it says the days were short and the father was gone.
Mm-hmm.
And that father is, yes, in a literal sense in the song, in the ballad, it's the father of, the human father of the son, but there's always more than one meaning to it, and that gets brought out even more later on in the song, where he says, you haven't met me, I am the only son. And so looking at human nature and what is man, we have this young man, the only son of the Father, which will be Christ, obviously, and is supposed to be all of us as well. We're called to be sons and daughters of the Father, and to be like Christ in that way. Carry our cross, to get over our hill by carrying our cross to the top of it, being crucified there, and seeing what we find on the other side when we meet our Maker. So,
Wow.
that's that. We made it to the end. We got over this hill.
Yeah.
Let me look real quick just to make sure there were no lines in here that I should have talked about and didn't. And after the storm, I run and run as the rains come, and I look up. On my knees and out of luck, I look up. It is kind of weird, he says, I run and run as the rains come. I think that's a flashback line to what he was doing when the storm was beginning, but now we're after the storm, and he's on his knees and out of luck and looking up. Night is always pushed up day. You must know life to see decay, but I won't rot. I won't rot, not this mind and not this heart. I won't rot. And I took you by the hand, and we stood tall, and remembered our own land, what we live for. But there will come a time, you'll see, with no more tears, and love will not break your heart, but dismiss your fears. Get over your hill and see what you find there, with grace in your heart and flowers in your hair. Now I cling to what I knew, I saw exactly what was true, but oh no more, that's why I hold with all I have, that's why I hold. And I will die alone and be left there, well I guess I'll just go home or God knows where, because death is just so full and man so small. I'm scared of what's behind and what's before. And what's behind I can clearly see, but that beyond, that's beyond me.
Oh man.
Flash forward to the last song 3 albums from now. But there will come a time you'll see with no more tears, and love will not break your heart, but dismiss your fears. Get over your hill and see what you find there, with grace in your heart and flowers in your hair.
Mm-hmm.
I just realized we really ought to have recorded this episode with you having flowers in your hair.
Oh, or you. Flowers in your hair.
It's maybe getting long enough for that. Here, I have a light bulb here. We can put that in your hair.
I can. Will it stay?
No, it won't stay. But I'll hold it here for a minute and it'll look nice.
Aw.
See? There we go.
Hmm. Lovely.
I think I just found the image that we'll use for the Instagram post.
Perfect.
All right. Well, that wraps up Sigh No More by Mumford and Sons. I absolutely adore Sigh No More, especially now after having gone through it in such granular detail.
Mm-hmm.
I'm overwhelmed by the level of masterpiece that this album is. It's so good. I love it. There are just so many beautiful things about Mumford and Sons, and it's a shame that they don't have more of a following than they do, but we're going to change that.
Yeah.
So like and subscribe, pass this on to everybody that you know. I have shorter Mumford and Sons videos too for people who don't want to listen to, hours and hours of us talking away and rambling occasionally. Let us know in the comments if you have any questions about Mumford and Sons, or just if you just want to chat about them, and let us know what your favorite songs are, your favorite albums. If you hate the Sigh No More album, let me know. I've met one person who hates it, and he just hates all of Mumford and Sons. I won't call him out. He's a dear friend, but
I'll have to ask you after we're done recording.
He has interesting taste. But anyway, I guess for the last time then, this is T.S. Russell and Bridget Gamboni reminding you to sigh no more.